You're listening to Family in Focus with Dr. Wendy Schofer, episode number 105. Welcome to Family in Focus with Dr. Wendy Schofer. I am the pediatrician and certified health and life coach who specializes in helping you parent without all the food and body drama. Let's get busy creating the life you want to share with your whole family. Welcome back, my friends. I'm going to admit it. I have used shame tactics when it comes to health. I've used them in the office, I've used them with my family, and quite honestly, I've used them with myself. And so today we're going to just first acknowledge it. I've used it, and then why? Because I really think that we have to acknowledge that shame tactics are there because, so many times if we don't acknowledge it, if we just kind of like disavow any knowledge of what's right in front of us, like the things we will not talk about, like shame, pretending we're all good and wholesome and nurturing, but we're actually using tools that are keeping us from whatever it is, the goals, the health that we want to create. Well, we're just kind of like putting up this curtain and not seeing what's actually behind the curtain. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to pull back the curtain and say, why is it that we're using these tools against us in the first place? So let's start off as a reminder. What is shame? And I think of shame as that icky feeling, the one that feels like my belly is kind of turning and then my cheeks get all flushed and I want to run and hide. It's the feeling that I get when there's a number of different thoughts that are happening. And thoughts could be something like, I'm not good enough. I'm bad. I am wrong. I don't belong. I am the problem. I am unhealthy. It's my fault. I am to blame. Notice the prevalence of thoughts that start with the word I. Shame is created as we make actions that we take or situations mean that something is wrong with us. And oftentimes it's our interpretation of what is going on. Perhaps it's a misplacement, a misstatement of the actual problem. So, take for example, oh my gosh, years ago, my first opportunity to say that I slipped on a patch of black ice did not end so well. So it was this fateful day over college break. I was driving to work, and I swear I broke every single driving rule by not calibrating that black ice would actually be there on the road. And then I saw this fire hydrant on the side of the road and I watched for it as it was poking its head out through the piling snow because, of course, it was snowing. And I'll be darned, I just headed right towards that fire hydrant. I was looking at it, and that's where I drove the car as I was skidding. And of course, I'm dating myself here because this was before the time of cell phones. So I couldn't call for help. So I hiked myself back up the hill to my dad and called the fire department, the tow truck, and also work to tell them that I was no longer able to get to work on time. And I shared with my dad what had happened. And I knew what I had done wrong. I had miscalculated the temperature and the road conditions. I had focused on the freaking hydrant when I skidded, and it led me to take it out. I had done wrong, but I didn't feel shame. And, while my actions were not ones that I want to repeat, okay, we could say they were faulty, they were wrong. I didn't make it mean anything about me. And so even when my entire family found out about it, and for years, Gigi posted this sign by her own fire hydrant that said, "Don't hit me, Wendy," in big festive lettering, I didn't feel shame. They poked fun at me for years, and I'm still the one telling the story. because I learned from it. It was a mistake, but it didn't mean anything about me. I wasn't the mistake. I did something that I wanted to do differently in the future, but it wasn't that internalization. So I didn't feel shame. Contrast that with the shame that I definitely knew and felt in my medical training, being told things like, I can't believe you don't know that, or you shouldn't be asking me that question, or you're wrong, or have you had assertiveness training? You ask too many questions. Oh, that's one of my very favorites. You're not doing it right. I'm not sure that you're going to pass this rotation, like all these different things that I heard. And each and every one of these statements could have been something that I didn't let it mean anything about me. And, I could be working to see how they reflect more about the person who said it than the student and the doctor that I was at the time. But instead, I felt shame because I made those words mean that I wasn't good enough, that I was the problem, that I didn't belong in that setting. And to be honest, at times that was the intended outcome of the person who was wielding the words as tools. Kind of like the lesson that they wanted me to learn from their words was just laden with shame, thinking that shame would be a teaching tool. Hashtag, hint, spoiler, whatever. It's not. Shame isn't something that is reserved for discussions about weight, health, and bodies. But oh man, I mean, it really applies there. Our culture has kind of really taken a remarkably individual responsibility approach to health and weight. I'm right now reading, where is it? It's right here. Here. I am reading Aubrey Gordon's book, What We Don't Talk About When We Talk. Yeah, what we don't talk about when we talk about fat. All right, just need to pause there a little bit. But she tells in detail about her experiences as a woman in a fat body. And I'm using her words as she is one of many who are reclaiming the word fat, not as a slur, but as a descriptor, just like short or tall. And she shares her experiences of being shamed for daring to travel on a plane. The message that she received repeatedly was something along the lines of like, how dare you travel in a plane in the middle seat with a fat body? How, if you're going to do that to travel, you should change your body. So the message that she was receiving, while it may not have been explicitly said, was you're wrong. You don't belong here. You need to change. And this is not an individual, story or experience. This is something that is happening to folks uh, in so many different areas. The thing is that it's cultural and quite honestly, it's institutionalized shame. While it's not necessarily said out loud, there are so many shades of weight bias in our society that we just don't see them in the day to day. And so stories like these kind of help shine a light upon it. Other ways that this can appear, shame is wielded by experts who think that they have kind of like the corner on the market about what is right or wrong. And as a physician, I've really had to confront this expertise and really ask myself, do I really know what is right or wrong, healthy or unhealthy for another person? That's a question that I was never taught to ask in medical school because I was taught to believe that I had all of the answers. It was my responsibility to know what was right or wrong. Well, how can that training really be something that's creating an environment that our patients are not feeling that they belong? And how is it that we as physicians are also using that against ourselves and our family members? Another example is with interventions. They're often approached this way where others see that change needs to be made, not by them by any means, but by another person. That whole thing, like we're sitting down and I got to tell you, you got to change. And in these kinds of situations, there's, often again, kind of like the expert in the medical office, there's often a relative hierarchy or control in play here. And, just thinking about that example of an intervention, if somebody says, that you need to change your eating habits, well, how different is that if your 3-year-old tells you that? Unlikely to prompt more than a funny memory or a video opportunity if they're, telling you need to change your habits, versus if your doctor is telling you you need to change, or perhaps your mother-in-law telling you this. They're thinking that it's their job to point it out. With that kind of hierarchy, maybe there's a power situation that can really impact how those words are received and the impact that it has on that person. The pointing out and the shame that results leads the person on the receiving end to withdraw, to hide, perhaps hiding their eating habits so that it's not being witnessed by other people again. And it's also causing that person that's receiving, on the receiving end of these statements to feel stress. And by the way, let's all remember that stress is never helpful for creating kind of like self-care in a positive way. It's not creating positive self-care and healthy habits, whatever that means for you, but it's kind of like one of these things that we're kind of like hiding, withdrawing, retracting. That's not building health. That's taking away from it. So, shaming is often used in a way that can also be used to spur conformity. Kind of like things that are said, like, why can't you be more like, and then insert another student's name or a sibling. It's kind of pointing out how you're different or you don't belong. And I've seen this time and again in the military as we have kind of like these ideals outlined for what a good officer is like, what fitness levels should be, weight and performance. And shame is often used in as a way to incentivize conformity. But what happens is that it misses out on understanding what an individual is actually experiencing. Like, well, what is different here? Why is that experience different? And often it misses out on, seeing how it is that differences are not liabilities, but perhaps actually strengths that we're just not looking for. Or maybe we're missing the opportunity to shed light on new perspectives, again, about what it is that someone is actually experiencing when we think they should be conforming. What's different? What else is going on? How else can we be looking at it? Shaming is also, it's the tool of the bully. It's pointing out how you are wrong. You're different. You don't belong. This is something that I really think that as adults, we all need to consider. Shaming is bringing middle school tactics into our current lives. And this isn't about creating shame about shame. I think it's about seeing just how pervasive these approaches are in our society. That the bullying that we experienced, or quite honestly, may have even imparted upon others back in middle school, it's a habit. It's a habit that's coming up again today. Just think about that. I mean, our brains go to things that are so black and white because we're trying to make sense of the world. And having one of two options to describe or label is the easiest way. When you're trying to think about, well, is this right or wrong? We sort, we compare. And, for our brains to be able to determine safety in this community, do I belong or not? That's the question that is coming up with shame. Shame is a feeling that we have that we are at risk of not belonging in the community. So, we are so often unaware of it. This is such a part of our society that, I even think about health messaging when, oh gosh, that phrase, when we say you are what you eat. What does that mean about the person who is eating pizza? Or what is being said when that statement is offered to a person in a larger body? Another way that it comes up, oh gosh, and I have both been the person who said this phrase and the recipient of it. You're not going to eat that, are you? I didn't realize that when I said it to family members in the past, I thought that I was offering them a chance to think, well, no, I'm not going to eat this. But thank you so much for pointing it out. I was on autopilot. I'm going to make a healthier choice. Like, I truly thought that this kind of like intervention type of approach, you're not going to eat that, are you? It was from a standpoint of trying to be helpful. But what I learned is that, my question asked something more than what the words actually did. It was actually saying, do you see how you're wrong here? That action was meaning something about the person I was saying it to. And maybe it's a blessing, I guess, that, I've both said these words and then I've also received it as well. And when I received that same question, you're not going to eat that, are you? I noticed that icky feeling of shame starting in my belly, going up to my cheeks, getting that flushed feeling. And then I noticed something else. And it was when I called it out because I was like, I'm feeling shame right now. I was like, damn straight, I'm eating the peanut butter cup ice cream. It's amazing. And then, of course, as we do, we have conversations. Again, you just ate it last night. I'm like, yes, I'm doubling down, damn straight. And your questions are not going to change my mind. They quite honestly may lead me to full on rebel and eat the whole darn thing tonight. So I share this because, that's the thing that it's like we have these individual experiences, these emotional experiences. And I think it's really connecting with the other person. We are trying to do the best. I don't think that we're actually trying to come in by and large and actually use shame, but it is being used. And we can't just excise shame with a scalpel. It's one of the many emotions that we feel as humans. And quite honestly, it's there for a reason. I like to think about or ask, what is it that emotions are telling me? And I think that shame is telling me that I'm at risk of not belonging. That's a protective mechanism because we need a community. We need belonging to thrive as humans. And we can start by, having the hard conversations about how we've kind of used these tools in the past, the shame, that are actually not helping us build the health and are driving us further apart. It's disconnecting us from each other, which also disconnects us from health. So, I mean, you're being challenged right now, just like I'm challenging myself, not to police words, because that's actually not the intention of this conversation, but to think about what is the other person experiencing? If you see them struggling, like, why are they struggling? What position of power or authority am I in that I think that I have all the right answers? How can I get curious and connect with them? I think there's so much more about this conversation about health than shame. And this is actually specifically not creating closure today because there's no such thing about closure on emotional experiences. But we can learn and start, I don't know, kind of like making little experiments. Perhaps yours is to look for where shame is lurking in your life. perhaps looking to the reaction or the response that others have when a correction is made, and asking yourself, is the correction about the action or about the person? The more that we can separate out the two, is this about the action or the person, the more that we can learn when we make it about the actions without shame, which is when we focus on making it mean that there's something wrong or need to be corrected about the individual. All right, my friends. So once again, I want to know how you're using this in your life. I want to know, what are the questions that you are asking yourself, and what are you discovering as you ask that of yourself in your own family? So until next time, much love to you and your family. Are you a healthcare professional? The continuing educational experience for the Family in Focus with Wendy Schofer, MD podcast is powered by CME-FI. Head to the show notes for the link where you can reflect and earn credits for this episode. To hear more about Family in Focus and the programs that I offer, go to wendyschofermd.com. That's SCHOFER. And you can sign up to get free weekly content, tips, and also be the first to know about all of my upcoming group and individual coaching programs. I'll see you there. Remember, while Wendy Schofer is a physician and talks about health and wellness for the whole family, she is not your physician. This podcast is not providing medical advice and does not replace the relationship that you have with your personal physician.